The most corrupt law enforcement officer I ever encountered walked into my courtroom that Thursday morning and announced, without hesitation, that the law did not apply to him. His name was Chief Daniel Morrison, a 15-year veteran and the head of the West Side Police Department. By the time the hearing ended, he understood exactly which laws applied, and just how serious the consequences could be. The case began as what should have been a routine traffic stop. Officer Jennifer Walsh, 3 years on the force, pulled over a vehicle speeding along Route 6. She clocked the driver at 70 miles per hour in a 45 zone, reckless driving through a busy commercial corridor. As she approached the car, the driver rolled down his window and immediately flashed a police badge. "Officer, I'm Chief Morrison, West Side PD. I'm responding to an emergency call. I'd appreciate the professional courtesy." Professional courtesy. The phrase corrupt officers rely on when they expect rules to bend for them. But Officer Walsh, an officer with integrity, asked a simple, reasonable question. She requested confirmation of the emergency dispatch. That's where Morrison's story unraveled. "I don't need to show you anything," Morrison snapped. "I outrank you. Professional courtesy means you let me go and forget this ever happened." Officer Walsh didn't forget. She contacted dispatch. There were no emergency calls, no active incidents, no justification for Morrison's speed. Just a lie, told to avoid a citation. She issued the ticket anyway. Because that's what honest officers do when they catch dishonest ones. The following day, Officer Walsh was summoned to her captain's office. Captain Rodriguez presented her with a formal complaint, filed by Chief Morrison himself. The allegations: unprofessional conduct, failure to show respect to command staff, and interference with an emergency response. "Morrison is demanding your suspension pending investigation," Rodriguez told her. "He claims you harassed him during an active emergency." But Captain Rodriguez knew his officers. Walsh had a clean record. No complaints. No disciplinary history. Something about Morrison's accusation didn't add up. "Captain," Walsh said calmly, "there was no emergency. I checked dispatch. I reviewed the call logs. He was lying. Can you prove it?" "Yes," she answered. "I have the dispatch records, traffic camera footage, and my body cam video of the entire stop." That was the moment Captain Rodriguez made his decision. Instead of suspending Officer Walsh, he forwarded the entire file to Internal Affairs and copied my courtroom on the complaint. Because when a police chief lies about an emergency to escape accountability, that isn't just misconduct, that's abuse of power. There I was, early Wednesday morning, reviewing Chief Daniel Morrison's case file. What started as a simple traffic stop had escalated into something far more serious. Speeding, false statements to a police officer, filing fraudulent complaints, and abuse of official authority. This was no longer about a traffic ticket. This was about systemic corruption, and then Internal Affairs uncovered the rest. Over the previous 2 years, Morrison had received 17 separate professional courtesy warnings from neighboring departments. 17 times he'd been stopped for speeding, running red lights, or reckless driving. 17 times he'd flashed his badge and been allowed to drive away without consequence. But the deeper IA dug, the darker the pattern became. Officers who failed to show Morrison the respect he demanded didn't just get reprimanded, they were punished. 3 were reassigned to undesirable posts after questioning his orders. 2 were written up for insubordination after refusing to void traffic tickets for Morrison's friends. 1 officer was outright demoted for reporting Morrison's misuse of department vehicles. This wasn't a bad chief abusing privilege. This was a coordinated abuse of power disguised as leadership. Thursday morning, 9:30 sharp, Morrison entered my courtroom like he was attending a photo op, uniform pressed, badge polished. That unmistakable confidence of a man who believed consequences were for other people. His side wasn't a union representative. It was a high-priced private attorney, the kind whose hourly rate rivals a patrol officer's weekly paycheck. Daniel Morrison, Christina announced, charged with speeding, making false statements to a police officer, abuse of official position, and filing fraudulent reports. He approached the bench, and the attitude was immediate, not remorseful, not respectful, just irritated, like accountability itself was an inconvenience. "Chief Morrison," I said, opening the thick file before me, You're facing multiple charges, including abuse of authority. Do you understand the allegations against you? Your Honor, he replied, his tone dripping with condescension. I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding. Of course there has. The opening line of every corrupt official's defense. What exactly has been misunderstood? Chief Morrison. He glanced at his attorney. Well, I believe Officer Walsh misinterpreted what was simply a routine interaction between law enforcement professionals. Misinterpreted. Chief Morrison, I asked plainly, did you tell Officer Walsh you were responding to an emergency call? I may have indicated I had urgent matters requiring my attention. According to the report, I continued, you explicitly stated you were responding to an emergency dispatch. Were you? Silence. His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. Your Honor, Morrison finally said, as a police chief, I'm always on call. Every moment carries the potential for emergency response. Potential emergency response. In other words, an excuse invented on the spot. Chief Morrison, I said, unfazed, dispatch logs show no emergency calls at the time of the stop. Traffic footage places you leaving a restaurant, not responding to any incident. So I'll ask again, what emergency were you responding to? Another pause. Longer this time. Your Honor, he said carefully, not all police business goes through formal dispatch channels. Chiefs sometimes receive direct communications regarding urgent matters. Direct communications? I asked. From whom? I'd rather not disclose sensitive operational details in open court. Sensitive operational details that moment. It became clear Morrison truly believed that invoking authority was enough to erase facts. But badges don't override evidence, and rank doesn't place anyone above the law. Chief Morrison, I said, rising from the bench, let me make this unmistakably clear. This courtroom will never be a refuge where law enforcement officials hide behind vague claims of operational security to escape responsibility for personal misconduct. His attorney jumped in quickly. Your Honor, my client was acting within the scope of his duties as a sworn officer. He is entitled to the same professional courtesy afforded to law enforcement personnel in the line of duty. There was again, professional courtesy. The polite phrase corruption wears to sound legitimate. Counselor, I replied evenly, professional courtesy does not include lying to fellow officers or filing false complaints against those who refuse to look the other way. That's when Morrison dropped the mask. Your Honor, he snapped, his tone suddenly sharp and confrontational. I believe you're exceeding your authority. Traffic court judges don't interrogate police chiefs about operational decisions. Exceeding my authority. Chief Morrison, I asked calmly, are you instructing this court on what it is permitted to investigate? I'm stating that police chiefs are granted discretion in how they conduct law enforcement matters, he said. We don't answer to municipal judges for every decision we make. We don't answer to municipal judges that in one sentence, he'd told the court that judicial oversight didn't apply to him. Chief Morrison, I said, my voice steady, every sworn officer in this state answers to the law. That includes police chiefs. That includes you. Your Honor, he replied, and now the contempt was unmistakable. With respect, the law doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. Police leadership understands it in ways traffic court judges may not fully grasp. The law means different things to different people. If there were a special version of justice reserved for those with rank and badges, that I sat back down and looked directly at him. Then explain it to me. What does the law mean to police chiefs that it doesn't mean to the rest of the public? It means, he said confidently, that law enforcement officials have discretion in how legal standards are interpreted and applied. We understand context, circumstances, and realities that civilian courts often overlook. Those realities, I asked, include ignoring speed limits? I'm saying officers responding to potential emergencies shouldn't be second-guessed by patrol officers who lack the broader perspective. And filing false complaints? I continued, does that fall under your definition of discretion as well? He didn't hesitate. Sometimes officers need to be corrected when they fail to show appropriate respect for command. Proper respect for command authority? I repeated. So in your view, Chief Morrison, lying about an emergency call qualifies as respect? His attorney tried to step in, but Morrison brushed him aside. He was visibly irritated now, clearly not accustomed to anyone challenging him this directly, especially not in open court. "Your Honor," Morrison said, his voice rising, "I've served in law enforcement for 15 years. I've protected this community, maintained order, and put my life on the line. I believe I've earned the expectation of professional courtesy from fellow officers and understanding from the courts." "Earned the expectation." "Chief Morrison," I asked, "what exactly do you believe you've earned?" "I've earned the right to do my job without being micromanaged by traffic court judges," he shot back. "Judges who've never walked a beat, never confronted violent criminals, never made split-second, life-or-death decisions. Never walked a beat. As if judicial service were somehow inferior, like judges were outsiders who couldn't possibly understand the law they uphold." "Chief Morrison," I said evenly, "I've served this community for more than 40 years. I've seen honorable officers, and I've seen corrupt ones. I know the difference." "And what difference is that, Judge?" he challenged. "Honest officers don't lie about emergency calls to avoid tickets. Honest officers don't file false complaints against colleagues who do their jobs. Honest officers don't believe they're above the law." That's when Morrison completely unraveled. "Above the law?" he shouted, loud enough to echo through the courtroom. "Judge, I am the law in my jurisdiction. I decide what gets investigated, who gets arrested, and which cases move forward. The law is what I say it is. I am the law." In one sentence, he placed himself above democratic accountability, above judicial oversight, above the Constitution itself. The courtroom fell silent. Defendants, attorneys, court officers, even Christina, stared at the police chief who had just claimed to be the law rather than serve it. "Chief Morrison," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the silence, "did you just tell this court that you are the law?" "I told you the truth," he replied, though his voice now trembled. "Police chiefs have authority civilian courts don't understand. We make decisions courts have no business reviewing. Civilian courts, as if the judicial branch were some amateur operation." "Chief Morrison," I continued, "let me clarify how government works in this country. Police enforce the law. Judges interpret the law. No one is the law." "That's theory, Judge," he scoffed. "In reality, law enforcement discretion can't be second-guessed by courts." "Do traffic laws apply to police chiefs?" I asked. "They apply when we're not performing official duties." "Were you performing official duties while speeding away from a restaurant?" "I'm always potentially performing official duties." "Were you performing official duties when you filed a false complaint against Officer Walsh?" "I was correcting an officer who showed disrespect." "Were you performing official duties when you lied about responding to an emergency call?" Silence. His attorney scribbled furiously. Morrison knew he was trapped, but his arrogance wouldn't let him stop. "Judge," he finally said, "civilian courts don't understand the pressures of law enforcement leadership." Again, civilian courts, as though the judiciary existed outside legitimacy. "Chief Morrison," I replied, "I understand law enforcement very well, and I understand corruption when I see it." "Corruption," he snapped defensively. "I've served 15 years without a single sustained complaint. Until now." "This is harassment," he said. "A traffic court judge second-guessing a police chief's operational decisions." "Chief Morrison," I said firmly, "lying to fellow officers is not an operational decision. Filing false reports is not an operational decision. Retaliating against honest cops is not an operational decision. Those are crimes." "Crimes." He laughed. "Judge, you're out of your depth. Police chiefs don't commit crimes. We stop them. We don't commit crimes." That I in that moment. Morrison made his position unmistakably clear. That wearing a badge, in his mind, granted immunity from the law itself. "Chief Morrison," I said, rising from my bench, "you seem to believe your badge exempts you from the laws you swore to uphold." "I believe law enforcement officials should be judged by people who understand law enforcement," he replied, "not by municipal traffic court judges who've never faced real danger or made real decisions." Never faced real danger. He actually thought corruption could be justified by the risks of police work, as if lying about emergency calls were acceptable because he faces criminals. Chief Morrison, I continued, let me show you what real consequences look like when law enforcement officials betray their oath. I sentenced him to the maximum penalties allowed by law. Speeding, $500 fine, 6-month license suspension. False statements to a police officer, $1,000 fine, 30 days in jail. Abuse of official position, $2,000 fine, 90 days in jail. Filing fraudulent reports, $1,500 fine, 60 days in jail, to run consecutively. Total, 6 months in jail, $5,000 fines, loss of driving privileges. But I didn't stop there. I immediately notified the State Police Certification Board and recommended revocation of Morrison's law enforcement credentials. No badge, no authority, no hiding behind rank. Morrison's face drained of color. You can't do this to me. I'm a police chief. I have connections. Influence, he shouted. Not anymore, I said. This is outrageous. I demand a real judge hear this case. A real judge. Even facing consequences, he couldn't accept that authority has limits. Chief Morrison, I said as the bailiff approached with handcuffs, the only outrageous thing is that it took this long for you to face accountability. This won't stand, he yelled as they cuffed him. I know people, politicians, judges. This conviction will be overturned. Those connections might have protected you before, I said, but they cannot protect you from evidence. As they led him away, Morrison turned one last time. All arrogance gone, replaced by panic and desperation. Judge, please. I made mistakes, but I'm not a criminal. I serve the community. Chief Morrison, I replied, police officers serve the law. Criminals serve themselves. You chose which one you wanted to be. The courtroom remained silent for a long moment. Everyone, defendants, lawyers, court personnel, was processing what had just happened. A police chief held accountable like any other citizen. After court adjourned, Officer Walsh approached. Your Honor, she said, thank you for supporting honest officers. Morrison bullied good cops for years, and no one ever held him accountable. Officer Walsh, I replied, honest officers shouldn't fear corrupt chiefs. Today's ruling sends a clear message. A badge does not equal immunity. Judge, can I ask, when Morrison said he was the law, what went through your mind? I thought for a moment. Officer Walsh, I thought of every citizen told accountability is impossible. Every honest officer punished for doing the right thing. And I thought of what happens to democracy when law enforcement believes it's above the law. 6 months later, former Chief Morrison was released. Law enforcement certification permanently revoked. No badge, no authority, no special treatment. Just another ex-con trying to rebuild. But real change came to the department. The new chief implemented comprehensive reforms. Body cameras on all officer-civilian oversight board for complaints. Mandatory ethics and anti-corruption training. Zero tolerance for professional courtesy violations. Officer Walsh was promoted to detective. Officers Morrison had retaliated against were reassigned to meaningful positions. Trust slowly rebuilt. 2 years later, I received a letter from a young academy graduate, Judge Caprio. During ethics training, we discussed your ruling against Chief Morrison. My instructor used your case to show why officers must be held to higher standards, not lower ones. Thank you for proving justice applies to everyone, even corrupt chiefs who think they're the law. Officer Maria Santos, Providence PD. Morrison learned the hard way. Claiming laws don't apply to me doesn't make it true. Badges create responsibility, not immunity. In America, nobody is above the law. Not police chiefs, not politicians, not even judges. My father used to say, Frank, the badge doesn't make the man makes the badge mean something. Chief Morrison dishonored his badge, betrayed his oath, and corrupted his office. The sentence wasn't punishment. It was defense for every honest officer who serves with integrity. That I'm Frank Caprio. Remember, when law enforcement thinks it's above the law, democracy dies.